Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today we are going to be talking about and reviewing and analyzing the governor's election in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This election is definitely interesting because Virginia and the state of New Jersey are the only two states in the country to have an off-year governor election the year after the presidential election. I would honestly start off saying right off the bat that both candidates are more establishment sides of their parties. For the Democratic side, you have Abigail Spanberger, who served in the CIA and who has a former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. She retired. She decided not to run for re-election to focus on the governor's election. She represented a competitive swing district and is pretty involved with the government. And Republicans are running Winsome Earl Sears. She was in the military, she was a Marine, and is the current Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. The Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General, and the Governor are the three statewide elected offices in Virginia. So, Winsome Earl Sears is currently the Lieutenant Governor who is not running for re-election. So, if you are curious about that, be sure to watch the video about the Lieutenant Governor election. But she is running for governor right now in a competitive state. Personally, to start off the race, I think that the Democratic Abigail Spanberger is slightly favored to win. Despite Virginia being a purple state, if not slightly blue state, you have to take into consider Virginia's voting habits. It's kind of interesting, but Virginia will elect a governor the opposite party of the president. It has done this every single time since 1972, with the exception of 2013. So I can give you some examples of that. In 2021, Joe Biden was just elected president, as you can see, and Virginia's current governor, Republican Glenn Youngkin, who's still governor right now, was elected. Virginia elected a Republican governor in response to the Democrat Joe Biden being in office. He won by a small but healthy 2 points, as you can tell. He did pretty well. And in 2017, Donald Trump was elected president, and they took it out on Republican Ed Gillespie, and the Democrat, Ralph Northam, won by around 8 points, as you can tell here. 2013 was the lone exception. However, many people point to there being a third party, which hogged up a lot of the Republican vote. This was the election with the lone exception. However, every other time since 1972, Virginia has elected a governor the opposite of the president's party. I could see in 2009, the Republican won. In 2005, the Democrat won. 2001, the Democrat won. The opposite party of who is the president. So let's fast forward back to now. Up here. So, as you can tell, Glenn Youngkin cannot run for re-election. Virginia is also the only state in the country where the governor cannot serve consecutive terms. So he is term limited. This election is to succeed Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin. With that being said, and the background of the election, and with it being in count that Virginia usually elects a governor the opposite party of the president, I will have to say by default that Abigail Spanberger is more likely to win over Winsome Earl Sears. Let's take a look at the polling. The polling shows a similar story. A good indicator of showing if a candidate is likely to win is that if they hit 50% of the vote. Less undecideds mean that the person who is leading is more likely to win. That's just usually how it is. So her polling average, she is reaching around 50% of the vote. And the polling in Virginia tends to be a little bit more accurate than in New Jersey. That's why I'm more confident in the polling here. If you're curious about the New Jersey race, you can watch the video about that. A lot of the polls have Winsome Earl Sears trailing to Abigail Spanberger. You have a poll that has the Democrat up by 12 points. I tend to think that as an outlier. There's a few internal polls that are less reliable, but a lot of the average polls, they show her up by 3, they show her up by 7, 5, another 7, plus 9. Now, I think that Abigail Spanberger will win probably no more than 8 points. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. But as you can tell right here, it has the two most recent governor elections. In 2017, Republican Donald Trump is in the White House. Democrat Ralph Northam won. In 2021, Democrat Joe Biden was in the White House. Republican Glenn Youngkin won. So it even shows, the past two elections. So just because of the situation and the scenarios and what the data points to, I think that the Democrats are favored to flip the election, as you can tell. And again, Spanberger is hitting 50% of the vote, and Earl Sears is very rarely even makes it to 45% of the vote, and that's usually a telling sign of who's going to win. I don't know if any of you guys saw the debate for governor, but it honestly wasn't that great. I think both the Democrat and the Republican had weaknesses. I would say Abigail Spanberger gave some weak answers in regards to the Jay Jones scandal. And Winsome Earl Sears kept interrupting her opponent and being kind of disrespectful. So I think both candidates have some baggage. However, I think they're reasonably strong candidates. They're not the far left or far right part of the base. They're definitely more establishmentarian candidates running. That is basically what sums up the governor's race. I still think, in a best case scenario, I think Winsome Earl Sears can win, but I really think it's unlikely. As you can tell, the presidential elections, Virginia at the state level is more competitive, but at the national level, it is more biased towards the Democrats. So you can see in 2020, Joe Biden won Virginia by a lot. And since 2020, I'd say Virginia has been shifting slightly to the right because Republicans did pretty well there in 2021. And in 2024, Donald Trump shifted it by 4 points. He was able to do pretty well in areas like Surry County and do better in the Hampton Roads area. He didn't win it, so he could have done better. However, he was able to get max turnout in the rurals. With that being said, a big reason that Democrats do win Virginia a lot of the time is they do well in the D.C. suburbs, like Arlington, Fairfax County. Those are areas that Democrats get lots of voter turnout, same as Prince William County. The areas up in the northern part of the Commonwealth. So, if Abigail Spanberger wins the election, all she would have to do is basically match Kamala Harris's numbers and just not let the rural areas come and bite her in the end. Winsome Earl Sears, if she wants to make this election more competitive, she should get closer to Republicans' numbers in the DC areas, narrow the margins, and win the Hampton Roads. The Hampton Roads are a really important part. If you look in 2021, you can tell that the Republicans did pretty well. This is an example of what a Republican victory in Virginia looks like. You can tell that Virginia Beach goes Republican, Chesterfield County goes Republican. Populated areas, suburban, have a lot of swing voters. If Winsome Earl Sears wants to make this election competitive, she would have to do better in these areas. If Abigail Spanberger wins by a lot, she's probably going to be winning these counties in this area. That is basically what the election is about in Virginia. If you want to look at the county map, this is basically what it is. You have the blue areas up here. I forgot to label this. Loudoun County is definitely pretty liberal. Now, if Abigail Spanberger wins, she will win these competitive counties. I have them listed here. These are areas or independent cities that swing. Let's first start off with Northampton County, Virginia. Not a lot of people live here. However, this county does usually vote in lockstep with who wins the election. Abigail Spanberger will probably win Northampton County. She will probably win Chesapeake, in my opinion. And it really comes down to these areas because Donald Trump flipped Lynchburg, Virginia, the city of Lynchburg, and he flipped Surry County. If Abigail Spanberger overperforms Kamala Harris, she would probably win these areas. However, since Winston Myrtle Sears is an elected official, she's a decent candidate. I do expect her to win these areas, just like Donald Trump did, despite losing the state by about 6 points. I would say that she should be able to win Stafford County. However, I think that's where the good news stops for Earl Sears. I think that the Democrats will win Chesterfield County. I think they'll win James City, Virginia, and Hopewell. Hopewell is a pretty Democratic city. However, it has shown support for Republicans in recent years. But I think it should narrowly go to the Democrats. It all comes down to Virginia Beach. If I think it's very possible once Myrtle Sears wins, I think it'll go Republican, at least down ballot. I'm gonna actually, as of now, give it to the Democrat because Virginia Beach usually does vote for whoever wins. It's definitely possible that once Myrtle Sears does win Virginia Beach, it's going to be very close there. But this is basically where my prediction stands for the governor's election. Now, I hope you can get some information out of this and that you enjoyed watching the video. And make sure to like and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel.